that so many of our community members appreciate and lets you ask questions and share experiences while remaining completely anonymous. So again, feel free to use this as the day continues. Let me go ahead and welcome Tamima from Milwaukee. Welcome Miriam from Israel. Welcome Alan from Elizabeth. Chaya from Toronto. Welcome Esther from the UK. Excuse me. Welcome Rachel from Brooklyn. And I can see people coming in. Oh boy, they're going quickly. So let me try to get to as many as possible. Welcome Rivka from Jerusalem and Rita from New York. Welcome Leah from Georgia, Jenny from Georgia, Rachel from New York. Welcome Liat from Israel. Welcome Andy from Israel. Wonderful to see you here, Andy. Let me see who else is coming in. Welcome Sarah from Florida, wonderful. I can see people here from all over the world, and I really just want to say thank you for taking the time to be here with us today and for investing in yourselves. Today is going to be really, truly phenomenal. Over the past 8 years, Sarah Chana has brought her expertise in parenting and relationships to our Jewish Workshops community. And today, Sarah Chana is going to introduce a brand new topic that prompted nearly 1,000 parents to sign up for today's introductory class. We are going to begin an in-depth exploration of how to deal with the pain, the hurt, the loss, and ultimately the resentment that occur when we're let down, disappointed, and even betrayed by others. Resentment can affect us to the core of our very being and can negatively impact our most important relationships. So, if you've been feeling this weight on your shoulders, you are not alone. You're here with several hundred other people from around the world. And now we will all finally get some well deserved guidance on how we can navigate these challenges in a productive way to bring us closer to those we love. Make sure to stay on the line until the very end to hear about this one time chance to join Sarah Chana week after week for a full live online program at a special discounted rate just for attending today. Plus, we will do our best to answer as many questions as possible live on the line, so feel free to write in questions while remaining anonymous, and at the end, we will address as many as possible. We also got some that came in ahead of time, so we'll address those as well. And without further ado, I'd like to get into it. So I am going to introduce Sarah Chana. It is an honor to be hosting you today. Sarah Chana Radcliffe is a psychologist in full-time private practice in Toronto, Canada, counseling parents, couples, and individuals. Mrs. Radcliffe is the author of Raise Your Kids Without Raising Your Voice, The Fear Fix, Make Yourself at Home, Harmony at Home, Better Behavior Now, No More Ticks, and several other books on Jewish family life and emotional well-being. Sarah Chana also writes a weekly column for the Family First section of Mishpacha magazine, and in conjunction with us here at Jewish Workshops, she has produced an extensive library of webinar classes on parenting, marriage, anxiety, and stress management, and runs our live ongoing weekly family life webinar series called The Family Circle. Plus, Mrs. Radcliffe heads the Sarah Chana Radcliffe Academy, where she trains and certifies parenting coaches internationally. Sarah Chana, we are so grateful that you are here today with us. I'm going to go ahead and pass the microphone right over to you.
Thank you so much. I wouldn't want to get resentful that you're taking too much of my time. So yeah, we're looking at a topic today that affects every human being. A lot of times we have unarticulated expectations. They're unarticulated to ourselves as well as to other people. We don't even know what it is we're expecting until we don't get it a lot of the time. Sometimes we do know in our relationships. Sometimes we have contracts even that have been spelled out quite clearly, and we are fully aware of what we are expecting. But sometimes we weren't really aware of it until we didn't get it. I'm going to give you a bunch of very common examples that people experience, but we want to share your examples here too. And as Jillian said, it's all anonymous. Nobody's going to know who you are or whatever. We'll just share the examples, which are, I'm sure, just the human things that we're all going through. And we go through it with our spouses, with our parents, with our in-laws, with our siblings, all family members. We go through it at work with our colleagues, with our bosses, with people who work for us. We go through it with our neighbors, with our community members, acquaintances, and friends, and with our children. And Certainly in the upcoming course, we're actually going to look at each one of those categories individually to go take a deep dive into the things that happen in these various relationships. But today, let's just start off with imagining that we invited somebody for lunch or for a nice meal, okay? And we made a very nice meal. And they had a good time. We had a good time. They left. We never heard from them again. Maybe as they were going out the door, they said, "Thanks so much. Everything was great," and then they left. And they thought it was a done deal. They came to your place as per your invitation. They enjoyed themselves. They said thank you and they left. But you were expecting more. Perhaps you were raised with certain social niceties, like writing thank you notes. Maybe, I mean, these are pretty old, but there could be a WhatsApp message today. "Thanks so much. It was a great lunch. We have to do it again. I'll have you at my place." Something that makes it feel like all that effort was appreciated. And this person was not brought up with that, doesn't know anything about it, doesn't know that you're expecting it, waiting for it, and doesn't deliver it. Okay. She doesn't know that she's supposed to do it, like, or the couple or whoever it was, doesn't just completely flies over them. They don't know anything about it. Meanwhile, inside of you, you're going like, wow, okay, that cost me so many dollars. It took me so many hours. I really put all out. They can't even like give me a follow-up note, nothing. And that can plant the beginning of the seeds of that. As we look at that lunch in a little bit more detail, or that dinner, whatever it was, we may not know that they don't know how much went into it. Okay, so different people are coming from different experiential backgrounds. It could be that our guest was a single person who never hosted a meal in his or her life. Again, said thank you and left it at that. But they didn't know. It could be actually even that it was a good friend of yours who comes regularly, but they didn't know um, what you actually went through to produce that meal for them. It could be that you had invited them, but then there was some financial crisis, so you didn't want to uninvite them, but this really cut into your monthly budget. Or it could be that you're pregnant, expecting a baby, but not ready to tell anybody about that. And you were feeling nauseated, weak, sick, exhausted, or maybe you had some other health issue going on. But that making this meal was even harder than usual, and putting out a nice spread is always time consuming and it requires effort. So that even on a good day, it would have been hard. But let's say you did this on a bad day, where it was really, really hard for you. So let's say the guest, whoever they are, just eat the meal. They seem to be enjoying it since they're taking second helpings and everything, but they're not effusive about this. They're not going like, "Wow, this is amazing. I can't believe you did this." They're not saying anything like that. They're just gobbling up their food. And and then bye, they don't even bother with "Thank you so much. We really appreciate everything," because maybe they don't appreciate everything because either when they do it, their household help does it, or they do it for some reason it's no effort for them, or they didn't realize just what difficulty it cost you to do it that particular time, or whatever. They just like, again, they're just eating it and they feel they've done their bit by showing up and by eating it, okay? And you're going like, "Oh my goodness, that was so unworth it for me." It can be that kind of thing, but you didn't mean it to be like that. You didn't set out to say, "I'm going to make this meal and I'm expecting a lot of applause and a lot of something," right? You didn't have that in mind consciously. You just wanted to have guests. But when you didn't get that applause in some form, you felt something inside. This is, again, very minor issue. There are many, many big things that go on in life, but I want to just look at the minor issue to begin with, and we'll expand a little here and much more when we look at things in full detail later. Um, Sometimes we're experiencing what we perceive to be an imbalance. It's supposed to be a two-way street in a lot of our dealings in our relationships, not a one-way street unless we're the mother of an infant. Okay. So we're going to give, wait 3 months to get that first smile, but we're expecting that kind of too. But let's say you did work yourself to the bone and you expected your guest to show up with something. You expected it. A little gift, could be chocolates, could be could be flowers rather, could be wine, could be a little tea towel, it could be anything. But don't come to my house empty-handed. And you had that expectation, but you didn't say, I'm going to make the meal and you just bring something. You didn't say that. You just assumed. A lot of times our resentment can grow out of our, like I said, unarticulated expectations, but we'll call them also assumptions. Who shows up without bringing a gift? We might have been raised that way. And meanwhile, our guests might like, who shows up without a gift? I do. Like, what was there a contract here, some kind of deal that I made with you? Do I have to buy my lunch? I mean, you invited me, I came, and they don't have anything else in mind. But because they didn't bring that gift, it somehow feels that this two-way street is now a one-way street. I feel taken advantage of. I feel unappreciated. We're not contributing our fair share here. It's not the feeling that I want. And it's again the beginning of the seeds of resentment. Now, chronicity, meaning it happens again and again and again, worsens all of this. So maybe I invited somebody and they gobbled things up and they left. And they did that again on the second time I invited them, the third time, whatever it is. Maybe it's been going on for years, but at some point it's going like the repetition of this lack of reciprocity, of gratitude, acknowledgement, appreciation, all of this is not there. And although it was okay for a while, for some reason I didn't notice it. There's like a slow steam building up till finally I go like, what? Okay, now I'm fuming with resentment. Why am I always the one? Okay, now before we get to that, why am I always the one? We actually have allowed ourselves to always be the one. Whether I was the one, there's a newspaper that's thrown on top of the stairway or something, I'm always the one to pick it up and discard it or take it in or whatever. I'm always the one who makes the meal or who makes the telephone call or who does whatever, taking it away now from the luncheon thing. Why am I always the one to invite? Why doesn't anybody invite me? Why am I always the one? This is also beginning to now stir the pot. I don't know why it kicks in later. If you end up saying, I'm always the one, that means somehow you have allowed this one-way street or this ungood feeling interaction to occur again and again and again. But at some point you notice it. And really, in the very background, it's been growing. But when you finally notice it, there's an explosion of it. So I just want to pause here because we've used a lot of this lunch or dinner scenario. But can you give me some scenarios that you've encountered that have this kind of dynamic where um, you're not feeling like you got what you were supposed to get, even if you never asked for it? Give me a couple of more examples and we'll keep these in mind as we go forward. Just write them in the chat box, a little thing. It may be completely not like this meal, inviting a guest thing. It could have some completely different flavor. Let's see what's happened to you in the way of resentment. Um, and also, if you can, you may even have a couple of questions so far on the examples that I brought up, but whatever you have there, your own examples or some questions, and we'll
Yeah,
see.
it looks like some great responses are coming in, and it might take a little bit of time because it takes time to type. But
Yeah.
when my husband goes on vacation with friends and I pack him up, watch the kids, and have everything ready when he comes home, and I don't get any acknowledgement, keeping in touch with family members, feeling closer than they do.
Hmm.
I I always call my sister-in-law. She never calls me. I'm so done. Being flexible in carpool. During COVID, everything was on me, running Zoom school, caring for a newborn, the house, etc. Just calling to say hi to friends and family. You're so on the money. This is why I haven't had my own in-laws over for years, for Shabbos or Yontif for almost 3 years now. Always need to call my parents rather than them calling me. A sister that I'm always there for. I've worked very hard to prepare Pesach meals, hosted everyone for 6 meals, and didn't get a gift from my spouse or a little something from the marrieds. Reminds me of always the one collecting money and arranging gifts for family occasions. My single brother-in-law staying with us until very late at night and not letting me go to sleep. And I don't want to tell him anything because I feel bad for him being single and not having a family or children. I always do nice presents for others and care for others, and I feel neglected. These are really great.
Yeah, this could go on for a long
Um,
time.
yeah,
Hold
yeah,
them
this could go
there,
on.
and let's get the second half of them as we go, just to pepper up our talk, because these are great. These are so typical, and the kinds of things, like I said, that we will be exploring in our upcoming course in detail. But this is what happens to good people who are very giving, who have big hearts, who want to do the right thing, who are trying to, I don't know, just like put that good energy out into the world, and then, well, it doesn't come back properly. There's something, you put it out and it just goes clunk, and it's not what's supposed to happen, according to us. Okay. We're going to get some deeper insights as we go along. But in the end, what happens is we feel hurt and then angry, or we feel the anger. Eventually we could peel away and find the hurt, which are some strategies that we're going to need to learn how to work with this feeling of resentment. Because when we feel this feeling of being unappreciated, neglected, or maybe even insulted, and we suffer silently, kind of just swallowing this stuff, um, it's not good for us. We're going to examine this a little bit later too, but it's toxic. Resentment is a toxic emotion to be carrying around. And it's kind of bad enough that we receive this insult from other people, but we may not be aware that we're stirring that pot and adding the salt and pepper to it inside of ourselves. Okay. We're making the story worse and worse as we go along. Once we notice that we're not being properly treated, then we get kind of on this train, okay, and we build a case. Once we've identified it, okay, we go like, I'm always calling her. She doesn't call me. Now, that's a simple observation, a simple reality, a truth. If we could just stop there, we would help ourselves quite a lot. But no, no, we like I said, to add the salt and pepper to it. Who does she think she is? Okay, we're going to like, you know, she can just sit back and wait for me to call. Why? Okay, is she too good to pick up the phone? Is she, or like, does she not value this relationship as much as I do? Does she think that she has the right to just take and take while I give and give? And we're like, adding the ketchup and the mustard and the vinegar and, like we start thinking, the brain can be a problem for us. So we're making a case now. And once we make the case, we will see the evidence more clearly. Once we've clarified in our mind that this is not right, and it's been going on for way too long, we start thinking the poison into us. Now, we're not wrong about the plain facts. Let's say we give, they take. They don't reciprocate. They're not balancing it out properly in a lot of these examples, or they don't notice and appreciate. So we're correct about the facts. But everything after the facts involves some level of work on our part, like interpretation of the facts, just for example. Now that we've assessed our story, kind of like, they must be doing this because they're selfish or they're arrogant or they're, I don't know, something. Um, and now that I've diagnosed that, whatever it is I've diagnosed, maybe they're narcissistic. Probably have some sort of severe personality disorder. Like I could really, depends what they've done, but I go into my, you know, psychiatric mode and I give them a good diagnosis and assessment, which actually causes me to feel not compassionate towards their illness, but more angry. Now I'm annoyed. Now I'm like standing back. Now I'm going to not have them over anymore. I'm not going to call them. I'm not going to give to them. I'm not going to do to them because I have to take care of this now. Okay, now taking care of it is important. And we're going to be learning how to take care of it in ways that take care of ourselves. So if at the end of taking care of it, you're feeling healthier and happier and good, and you haven't done something that makes part of you feel ugly at the same time, because there's ways of taking care of things that are not purely good, okay? But we want to end up with something that's actually purely good. This will take a little bit of work on our parts, a lot more understanding. But anyways, let's say we start noticing that we're getting more hostile at the beginning before we took care of it, all right? We're developing a contemptuous sort of attitude now towards the perpetrator of our resentment. Like we're getting disgusted because there is a progression. First, we notice, then we tell ourselves an explanation, a story that makes us even more annoyed and angry, and eventually, yes, disgusted and maybe even enraged. Okay, it kind of builds like this. Now, the perpetrator of all this, the person who initiates all this storm inside me, may be clueless, may have no idea that you're suffering on account of their behavior, and they're going about doing their happy little thing, which is even more annoying. That they don't, if you finally explode at them one day, and when you've come to your last straw, they may be shocked. They're thinking like, you've lost your mind. What's wrong with you? Because they had no idea what was going on. And Julian, I'm ready for a few more of these spicy stories. Do you have any more to read to us?
Yes, absolutely. When parents are more generous with one child and you see that his wife spends the money and his children on trips, designer clothing, etc.
Mm.
I have been back and forth helping with grandchildren, Baruch Hashem, a lot of flying to help, and I would love for my kids to acknowledge my big birthday coming up.
Ah,
My husband always volunteers to do things. To me, if you say you'll do it, I always do it, but he often doesn't, which triggers me. um, cleaning up at cleaning up the table at larger family gatherings, inviting over guests when I had little kids and guests then gave me negative comments about my kids. I feel like I shouldn't have invited them to begin with and put myself in that position was so uncomfortable. Um, my ex-husband ruining my children and me trying to undo the damage, working very hard to give best opportunities and care, and then he's brainwashing them.
there's so much. We'll take a break
Yeah.
again. Okay. So, we start off in a relationship, let's say with a spouse, and we're giving and giving, and we feel like we're in a partnership until we notice that, hey, maybe we're not. We're giving, we're cleaning, we're working, we're cooking, we're child caring, we're doing a million things. And maybe it starts to not feel reciprocal and balanced, and you don't feel like you have a partner, and you move in your identity as a result of the resentment from the identity of being a partner to the identity of being a victim. So resentment can actually change your self-identification. This can also happen with the kids. So, of course, we start off, like I said, with the babies, giving and giving and giving, of course, okay? And with the toddlers and the preschoolers, giving, giving, but we're hoping to get a little something back here, a little cooperation, a little bit of happiness, a little bit of appreciation. We're hoping, but let's say the kids are growing older and older and we're just not getting. And our identity moves from being a loving parent to being a martyr, okay, a suffering, long-suffering person who's being misused, mistreated, abused, if not just plain unappreciated. The same thing can happen at work, where we were starting a job as a really enthusiastic employee, wanting to do our best and giving our best, and then not getting the acknowledgement, not getting the financial remuneration, not getting the privileges and understanding that our efforts have should have yielded. And so now we go from being that enthusiastic, happy worker to an underappreciated worker, and again, that bad feeling of what I'm doing and who I am. Oh, we have it in friendship. I was such a good friend. We're such a good friend. I do everything for my friend when she needs me, when she's sick, when she's pregnant, when she's, I don't know, her kids or whatever. I'm there for her. I'm there for her. I'm there for her. And then I need her once and she's not anywhere to be found. So from good friend to ex-friend, sometimes. So resentment has real consequences in our actions because we may withdraw from relationships or we may withdraw from doing what we would like to do in relationships. Like maybe we enjoy this giving and we won't be able to. And we even change our idea of who we are in the relationship. And from there, if this happens often enough, which I'll tell you something, for people who have a big heart and like to give and like to do, it does happen often enough because not everybody has that, okay, that generosity of spirit. So if it happens again and again and again, then we get turned off, okay? We get very cynical. It's like, what's the point? There's nobody who returns the favor. Nobody gives back what I give. Like, nobody's really there for me. I'm on my own, as it turns out. I thought I was in the thick of all of these tight relationships, and no, no, it's just me, number one, and everybody's out for themselves because nobody's out for me. This deep cynicism, a feeling that we're in a cruel, cold, isolated world, can be the result of these unmet expectations and disappointments and lack of appreciation. And so, though we started off young and bright-eyed and, bushy-tailed, as they say, we're, like happy people, by the time we're 30 or 40, or sometimes 40 or 50, depending on, how long it takes, we may find ourselves becoming hardened, cynical people, untrusting of humans, very cautious, avoidant, and just carrying a lot of resentment and disappointing experiences. When untreated, okay, when we leave them alone, can harm our overall mood, our personality, just who we are in the world. And it seems unfair that, we have our personality. Why should it be that somebody from the outside world, behaving as they do, should be able to have such a dramatic effect on us? And this is one of the things, again, that we'll be looking at in our course, because no, they should not be able to change you, your optimism, your happiness, your big heart, and all the unique, wonderful characteristics about you. We want them to stay intact no matter what anybody else does. So let's just see. And we'll just pause here. Do you have any questions on what I'm saying so far? Just for a question or two, let's chat here.
I saw a question come in. What happens when you do say something to the quote unquote perpetrator and they respond by saying, "Oh, you're just too sensitive."
It's like adding insult to injury, right?
Right.
So, yeah, um, it's good that the person tried to do something about the situation. However, we do need real skills in terms of how we're going to make that effort. And we need to anticipate all of those kinds of responses because there's things that we have control of, which is our mouth, and how we present ourselves. And there's things we don't have control of, which would be the other person's feelings, their thoughts, and their behaviors. We don't have any control over how they will respond. So when we really are prepared, we can't just like, you know what, I'm just going to tell them about this. Like, we really need to get a lay of the land better. We'll see how much time we have today after we cover our general things, whether we can look at this a little bit more now or we will look at it when we come up, because knowing how to deal with this situation is really important. So um, you're asking what should we do, but it's not a simple answer for that. One thing, what we'll do is anticipate that response before we begin and have a plan. That if they say you're too sensitive, and one thing, I'll just give you one little tip here. When somebody says that, what we have is the communication pattern that's called attack and counterattack. So it's not that you meant to attack literally, but you offered something that was essentially a criticism or complaint. No matter how nicely you packaged it, you're asking for some sort of correction on the part of the other person. And that is just called an attack because for them, that's how it feels, no matter how nicely we put it. And instead of dealing with your attack, they give you a counter attack, which is a complaint about you. And one of the styles, there's very common styles of these complaints, the counterattack, but one of them is you're too sensitive. Okay, you're imagining this problem. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. You don't know what you're talking about. It's a discount of your concern. Okay. So one strategy for that is actually just to ignore the discount and come back to your point. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm very sensitive, but still here, and we come back. So, but we have to look at this, like I said, in a lot more detail. Okay, resentment hurts, but I said before that we like to stir the pot. We actually like to hold the resentment and nurture it inside of ourselves and rub it and massage it, feed it, like all these things, because doing so feels somewhat healing. It seems to also booster up the aura, the protection, the fence we have around ourselves for making sure that this mistreatment doesn't happen again. So if I tell myself, I gave and they didn't give back appropriately, okay? I do, and they don't do anything. So, I have my strategy about what I'm going to do about it. But in order to bolster my resolve here, to keep up to my strategy, to not let myself be a sucker again and just keep giving and giving when I should stop, I need to reinforce that story. I need to keep telling myself, they're awful. They're awful. How they took advantage of me, why they used me and mistreated me. And, I can't believe them. And that, you know, keeping to stir that resentment helps me to stay strong so that I won't be taken advantage of again. So we can see the appeal. It comforts us, it strengthens us when we're feeling weakened and diminished. It also offers us a bit of comforting moral superiority. I am a good person, and you are a garbage heap, and that also kind of like keeps my self-esteem up when otherwise I feel like somebody just took a big boot and stepped on my head. So through repeating the story and its variations, um, we have protection, but also the effect of making this story true and truer and truer and truest. We are creating a reality in our head. And from a Jewish point of view, the things we think in our head actually have an impact in the world as well. Okay, so we're making a shape, a form in the universe that is going to be challenging to shake out later, but we can do it, okay? So we're validating ourselves in order to strengthen ourselves, in order to protect ourselves. We're not horrible, awful people. We're just trying to stay safe and not get hurt anymore. And so we're proving to ourselves how badly treated we were, and we keep talking about it to ourselves and maybe to other people. And if we were to just let go of it and go like, yeah, who cares? I love them anyways, then we would feel vulnerable again. Like, well, now I'm going to start treating them nicely. Now I'm going to start giving more than I should give. Now I let go of all my boundaries because I let go of the anger. And now there's nothing, holding me together. So I may get re-injured. There's a vulnerability if I were to change my mind and go like, some people just, I love them anyways, and I enjoy cooking, so I'm just going to keep having them. Um, it becomes very hard to do that once we have stirred our pot enough. So this replaying of the story has one other consequence, and it's a form of re-traumatization. So let's say we go back to our dinner party or lunch that we made, and the people ate and left and did not say anything. And we can make it worse, of course. They didn't help us serve or clean up. They didn't offer to pay for anything. They didn't send that thank you note. They didn't say how wonderful everything was. They didn't do any of the possible things that they should have done. They just ate and bye-bye. This very often is your own children, your married kids. But it could be anybody. Um, and that was a really bad and disappointing experience for you. But then when we think about it and we replay it and replay it and replay it, what's happening is we're experiencing it in our nervous system again and again and again. So it was one bad night, okay, or one bad day. It becomes now, it could be a bad year or a bad life because we cannot shake it out. And we're not even trying to shake it out. We're trying to, keep it alive. So for all that protection I was talking about. So it happens hundreds and thousands of times instead of just that particular one time that it happened, or those, even if we said it happened 50 times, before we realized that we were being taken for a fool. Now it happens constantly running as a traumatic circuit in our brain, which takes up a lot of our brain energy and space, and unfortunately contributes physically in a very bad way to who we become. People have certain facial expressions, hardened, miserable looks on their face in their resting neutral face, That's from thinking certain kinds of thoughts. Like, it's interesting, but resentment and the thoughts and feelings that go with it do not produce beautiful facial images. Like they etch something else into us. If we knew that it was as bad for us as, let's say, smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, like we wouldn't do it. So we said, well, how do we not do resentment when resentment isn't our fault? Okay, like somebody else is behaving badly. So what are we supposed to do? And it's really interesting because the natural, untrained thing to do is to feel this anger and resentment. And all these defenses that we've been talking about, practicing, telling a story, practicing the story, remembering what they did, holding ourselves back with a steel iron not to give anymore, becoming hardened in our arteries as well as in our personalities. These are just meant to protect us. What can we do? One might wonder. Right? Of course, Hashem, who created us, knows all about us and does have some very important tips for us and direction to offer us. Always, all roads of Torah lead to peace. So the secular psychologies do not necessarily look at this the same way. There are things, there are many, many things that we can do to get that resentment out of our system, even though it was perpetrated, bad behavior was perpetrated on us. We were sort of victimized, mistreated. We were definitely unappreciated. We were not partnered with appropriately. We were not seen, acknowledged, celebrated, protected, loved. We were badly treated from somebody on the outside. But what happens to us, we have more choice and direction over it than we might think. But if we let the natural result of that, the resentment with being completely natural, if we let that take over, it is harmful for us mentally, emotionally, and physically. It can affect our digestion, our sleep, our well-being, okay? Because all negative thoughts, and the thoughts we're thinking here are, they're not pretty. They have an effect on our physiology. Our body doesn't work the way it should. And like I said, the eventually the face shows it. You look at people, just in a store or if you're in any public place, look at them, look at the older people because their face can sometimes tell the story. Now sometimes it's telling the story of how anxious they've been, but often it's telling the story of how disappointed, frustrated, and angry they've been. Their neutral resting face. Go on a subway sometime, just I don't know. You'll see it. It could be yours. So we also, once we just let resentment run its natural course, our relationships get less fun. Okay. If we don't do anything, just let the resentment sit there. And this, even if we continue to give and continue to feel resentment, we won't feel very good in our relationships. And if we don't give because we don't want to be taken advantage of anymore, we also don't feel great because we don't have those loving relationships. There's something we have to do. We have to find a way to work through this where I feel great even though you don't treat me very nicely. That's where we want to end up with. I just pause here for more questions, another couple of questions and thoughts that you're having as I'm speaking.
This one came in before this last little bit, but
Yes, okay. Mhm.
how do you resolve your resentments when you know that you can never tell the perpetrator how much it hurt you because they're unable to see beyond themselves, and yet you have to live and raise a family together? You brush the
Oh,
resentments down, but the resentments keep raising up, and that voice inside you tells you that you are not strong enough if you can't tell this person what they did and how much it hurt.
again, you're touching on things that we will be looking at in more detail, but this is the question of if you want to communicate your resentment, which it sounds in this question like is bubbling up inside, and I need to express it. At the same time, I know that the person I'm going to express it to is going to either throw it back at me, discount it, ignore it, not work with it, which is a very common thing, again, because people don't like to hear complaints about themselves. Um, and yet, you know that you have to get rid of this toxic feeling that's inside of you. So, fortunately for us, there are ways to get rid of the toxic feeling without involving the perpetrator, we'll call that person, having to cooperate with us. There are ways. This is another one of these questions that I can't answer right now because we don't have time to go into the ways. But I just want you to know that there are ways to change the way we feel, also the way we behave, and to come out peacefully. Okay, because this is the thing. We don't want to just stuff it and do the natural course with resentment is to acknowledge the resentment, feel it, stir it, play with it, like I said, reinforce it so that we can protect ourselves from more mistreatment, and to hide out with it, and to then have all of this in our body that then affects our health, our physical health, our mental health, our happiness, our general optimism about life, can be affected and become, despairing and hopeless about human relationships filled with mistrust and negativity, poisoned by it being inside. Okay. If we don't do anything, the natural defense is going to end up there. So the natural defense is telling ourselves the story and avoiding the situation, let's say. But that's not good enough. We need to find defenses that leave us feeling happy, optimistic, good, healthy, clean, energetic, happy to be alive, like, and okay with the state of humanity. That's really the problem. If you have, people are the problem here. Okay. We need to move beyond natural to get an unnatural or a spiritually elevated perspective on things that penetrates deep enough into our heart and soul. And there are specific strategies for us to take. It's not just like, oh, I should just forgive them. Like it's not going to be that. Okay. Um, well, let me ask you, where does resentment come up the most in your life? And just put this in everybody who's here, just put it in the chat box, okay? Is it from a spouse? Is it from the kids? Is it from in-laws or your own relatives? Is it from your friends or the community? or somewhere else. Okay, what is the biggest, where do you get triggered the most often? Where are you going to end up feeling resentful? Who on the outside world is going to get into your kishkas? Who's going to do that?
Spouse, family, parents, spouse, kids, my mother, all of them, since the pattern is in all of it. Spouse and kids mainly, my community, my partner, my kids, my spouse, my mother, ignorance of my sister, my mom, exclamation point, definitely my husband, kids and community, siblings, spouse and community, parents, workmates, in-laws. Um, yes, please help. Oh,
Yeah, so there's
oh, we
a
did
lot of
actually have
spouse.
one.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah, go ahead.
we had one that said, what if it's Hashem that we're resentful towards?
Oh yeah, that at least makes sense because Hashem sends the spouse, the children, the community, the friends, and all of these incidents. I like that one actually. There's also a hopeful way to work with that one. Um, and we are in the upcoming, extended course, which we're doing on this topic. We are going to go into all of those, and I do hope that all of you will join me for that. Okay, but that deeper analysis and that deep dive into the mechanics of this thing and the cure for it. But for now, let's look at least a little band-aid approach, which would be we have a little four-step process that we can use just to tide us over. Let's put it that way. Okay. As we see, the closest relationships we have from that list that we just heard are most likely to be the source of our resentment. So we have spouses. That's really, 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 really common. Okay. And we have mothers, also very common. So, yeah, these things are really hard. And then the other sources as well. It's not like it's only, sometimes if it's friends, it's going to be our good friends often, the closer they are, in a way, the more dangerous relationships can be. But let's see what goes into the creation and the maintenance and for today, a little bit of the release of the resentful feelings. So, one thing is to understand that addressing resentment is easier, just like addressing any problem is easier when that problem is still early days, when it's still small. So some of us notice that things are not going well, and then we let it stay that way. Like we notice that we're doing more than our share, and we keep doing it, and we keep doing it, like I said before, and we keep doing it. I would say that if you're noticing something, we're going to try and deal with it in some way as soon as you notice it. Because the worst part of the resentment cycle is that story. See, I said like the person comes for lunch, they eat their meal and they go, right? And that was really unpleasant. Now, if right there, if that happened once, you might start noticing that and thinking, that was unpleasant. Notice it. Don't do it again. Don't invite again and do it again. But that was unpleasant. I want to address this right now. Because if your resentment units, let's say you've told the story to yourself again and again and again and again, and you know, you've demonized them, they're horrible, they're selfish, they're thoughtless, they're awful people, and you're trying to get that boundary really thick in front of you so that you will not deal with them again. And you're analyzing, diagnosing, and spewing out hatred, in your heart. Of course, you're behaving properly. But you know, all that in your heart means also in your lungs, in your organs, in your liver, like in your digestive tract, in your brain. Okay, we don't want it there. We want to avoid that rumination. So if we can skip to a very practical step, I didn't like that they left. No, thank you. No helping with the serving or anything. No words of gratitude and acknowledgement of what went into this. No gift, no follow-up telephone call, note or anything, nothing. I don't like it. Okay. And make a plan right then before you start adding the salt and pepper and all that stuff. Because you're adding it to yourself, not to them. They don't even know what they did wrong. They're sleeping fine, right? They're happy with themselves. Bye, that was great. Bye. They don't have a clue. They're not suffering. Why should you? I'm going to ask you a question right here. Do you stop or do you ruminate when somebody has mistreated you? Do you deal with it right away or do you sit in the stew of it? What's your tendency?
I sit and stew. Absolutely. I'm there with you. I ruminate. I sit and stew, ruminate, usually ruminate about it, depending on who it is. Sometimes one way or the other. Ruminate always. I sit and stew. I don't see a lot of people who handle it right away. Sit and stew. Absolutely.
The reason
I
I'm
com
asking this question is because sit and stew is the definition of resentment. Okay, anger can pass in a moment, right? But the definition of resentment is that it's a stewed stew. Okay. That is resentment is a slow, ongoing, constant irritation inside. It's long. It requires rumination and stewing, right? If we didn't sit and stew, we don't have resentment. So by definition, we resenters are sit and stewers, okay? That's what it is. We stir that pot. So if we could just stop doing that, it would be so much healthier for us. Okay. So we want to just not do that. Now, the second thing we can do is when we notice that we're not having a good feeling, we should investigate a little bit. What is the bad feeling I'm having? Right? It's different for each of us. What is it really that's hurting me? That's a question we could ask. What got wounded here? Like I was making this meal and I was enjoying it. I don't mind cooking, let's say. Like I don't mind giving. I love giving. It gives me a great feeling, right? Knowing that I'm going to make people happy. But then, and the people who ate it actually were happy. They gobbled up every last, thing on the plate there. There's nothing left. So they enjoyed it and they were laughing and talking. So it wasn't that, I failed in my mission to make people happy. So what is it that's hurting here? And for each one of us, this might be a different thing that's hurting. It could be for somebody it's like nobody in my life ever acknowledges that I do anything significant, and yet I spend hours preparing this kind of thing. I pour myself into it. It's where all my life energy goes. And what I want is not only that they eat it, but I want them to appreciate it. Okay. I need them to say it was great. Thank you. I loved it. I need to hear those words of affirmation because that's where my self-esteem comes from. And so then we have a little bit of self-knowledge there. It's like, oh, my self-esteem comes from there. This is not what I thought it was, like a desire to make other people happy. That's got nothing to do with self-esteem. Like I like to make other people happy. I like to go and do good things for people. So I'll sit beside somebody who's in a coma and they're not saying anything to me. But I love that. I love doing that good deed, right? But no, I can't do that because for me personally, I want the person to know my good deed. So I don't want to go sit beside a person in a coma, unless maybe their family says how happy they are with that. So yeah, I can't just do that. So um, yeah, we want to know ourselves. What is the wound? What expectation wasn't fulfilled for me? So that I can figure out what I need to do differently. Basically, that. Okay. Um, Comments and thoughts on that one. Julian, are you there? Should I
Yeah,
take
I'm
over again?
here. I haven't
Yeah.
there. It just takes a little bit of time.
Oh, okay. Just make sure.
I don't think there was anything specific on that one.
Okay. Okay, good. All right. Um, Now, one of the benefits of actually asking this question, what is my pain, my specific pain? And it's not just generally, I don't want you saying things like, nobody appreciates me. I want to know why that matters to you. Why do you need to be appreciated? What's your life story? Well, do you not appreciate yourself enough? Like really want to understand, why does that hurt so much? Because when we get very specific with ourselves, it actually reduces the size of the resentment. If we have big things going on in our head, they are awful. Okay, that's big and undefined. And probably they're not awful. Probably they just don't write thank you notes or something like that. You know what I'm saying? But we can't see that clearly once we've clouded it over with how big and awful they are. So, um, when we pin it down as specific as possible, which we will learn how to do, then we shrink the big, vague, dark cloud of hatred, whatever, to a very specific thing, you know, and then we feel better as a result of that. It becomes smaller at that point. As I said before, under the anger of resentment, we're going to find a little bit of hurt and pain, a softer feeling that's going to be actually easier to take care of and to comfort, because the anger creates a very big, dark cloud. And even if it's the resentment, instead of a black, stormy thing, it's a slow gray mold kind of that's overtaking your system. We want to get rid of that and make it better to have a small black point, than this huge gray mold that encompasses everything. And we also, in order to help us with that, the next step is to notice the story and the diagnosis that we have generated. All we know among the facts is that the person didn't say thank you, or didn't send a card, or didn't do their share, whatever it was. We know they did something wrong, right? So um, we need to now know, what are we saying about that? We want to see how we're salting and peppering that. What am I saying about that person? Selfish, ingrate, narcissistic, hateful. This, by the way, is the kind of resentment that in marriage can lead us all the way out of marriage, okay, either physically or, legally, emotionally, there are different ways, right? So the story matters. When we got married, just for example, we thought the person was wonderful. That's why we married them. And then we see that they're not pulling their weight, doing their share. So we start to feel something, we start to feel the hurt, first of all, then the anger, the resentment, and then the story that feeds and nurtures and maintains that resentment. So that story sometimes turns that perfectly nice, regular, ordinary human being into a complete psychotic demon. Okay. Story is really powerful. And it can hurt a lot of things, but it actually ends up hurting us because the story is in us. It's in our body. It's in our brain. It's got its chemistry attached to every story. Every word we think has a chemical package attached to it. Every sentence we say, every idea we hold produces chemistry inside me. That's why I don't want that story, that toxic, ugly story living in me. We have to figure out a way to get rid of it. So, they only think about themselves. It's all about them. They don't care about anybody else. There's something wrong with their brain. There's something wrong with them. They're using me. They're whatever story. We don't want at this point today to change the story. We simply want at this point to take home with you to please notice the story. Just notice it. Just let it be there and notice it. There's a few steps to consider also. Why haven't I done something about this? What is it in me? Is it in me, or is it that not knowing what to do with their response? Let's try and figure out like what broke down. Like, is this something I can talk about? Is there something I can't talk about? If I can't talk about it, there are good reasons for that. It could be my childhood, it could be my personality, it could be the history in this relationship, it could be the nature of this person, it could be what's happened before, it could be my experience in life. But I want to know, like, why don't I just take care of this nicely? It could be I don't know how, right? Um, and then we can experiment with a few things here. We might experiment with the story to begin with. Can we, and are we willing to at this point, experiment with modifications to the story? Once we've identified what's hurting us so much, would we be willing to play around with the story for alternate explanations of the behavior? Can we just begin to do that? Now, a lot of times we're going to be screaming, no, I don't want to do that because I'm going to be hurt. Okay. And I do not want to open myself to that. I cannot be hurt. So, no, I need the story. The wall. Remember the wall? I don't want to be near this person, right? So, um, we may not be willing to do that yet, but just notice that too. Like, no thanks. Just notice that. And we will, like I said, go into it more. There's still things we can do, even if we don't want to alter the story. But if we can do this step of ceasing to focus on the story, just let the fact that the person did whatever they did be the facts. They left without saying goodbye. They didn't pay for anything they were supposed to pay for. They didn't chip in, they didn't help. If we can practice right now simply observing the facts and skipping the diagnosis, the analysis, the rumination, and the story building, that would be a good start for today. You will feel very light because, interestingly, the communication of our resentment, although that's a possible intervention that we may want to undertake, is rarely necessary. What we might want to communicate sometimes is our wishes, what we want the person to do. Sometimes that may be appropriate. You can ask yourself, if I wanted to change this, what would I ask them to do? And I know I'm hearing you go like, yeah, but they won't do it and they don't care and they think it's crazy, whatever. But sometimes asking for what you want is the necessary step. And sometimes you haven't done it. You could ask yourself, have I done that yet? Or have I just built up resentment? Especially when it comes to things with friends and stuff. Maybe we never even asked for what we wanted. So asking for what you want in terms of a behavioral change, I would really want help in the kitchen. Okay. I'm serving this meal by myself, and there's 20 of you here. I need help. Could 10 of you get up right now, come get a dish and, whatever. So, like, just ask for what you want. That's often much more important than discussing how resentful you feel and much less destructive. In fact, you'll find out as we explore things, that's very rarely a useful technique to express your resentment to somebody. There are other things that we should be doing first. So we want to learn in more detail, how to prevent feeling resentful in the first place, even though people don't behave properly to us and around us. And if we have some resentment, to notice it and how to stop it from growing and eating our organs. We want to catch it as early as possible and address it in ways that will not produce problems, but that will release us into our greatest happiness possible, right? And we want to keep ourselves safe and healthy and not find ourselves being doormats and walked all over and abused, mistreated. That's up to us. And to do that without the need for the resentment to carry us through it. Okay, so that's where I'll leave off. And Jillian, you can pick up whatever you want.
Thank you so much. I see people already saying, okay, how can I continue? I want the next steps to move forward. So if you're interested in hearing more, come back to the chat box and just write me, and I am going to get into all of the details right now. Let me put that up here. So, as I mentioned in the beginning, and Sarahana mentioned several times, we are offering a full series to continue on and learn all of the in-depth ways that we can not only squash our resentment and hopefully feel differently in ourselves and in our bodies, but really help move forward and in a healthy, productive way. So, what that is going to look like Starting next week, we are going to begin with session 1 on resentment, why it happens, and what to do about it. Again, we're going to go so much more in depth about the full feelings and everything that is included in what resentment is really all about. Session 2, marital resentment, how learned helplessness poisons the well. And we saw today so many people talking about spouses and the resentment that they hold through that. I think that was probably the number one answer, followed by parenting pitfalls, how to avoid resenting your own children. Of course, in session 4, we're going to be talking about extended family resentment, what goes wrong and what can be done. Again, these were all of the answers that we talked about. Resenting friends, community, and life in general will be session 5. And session 6, we're going to wrap up with From Resentment to Empowerment, Your Path to Emotional Freedom. Sessions 7 and 8 will really focus on questions and answers coming from the audience and practical ways to implement all of the tools that Sarahana presents throughout the full series. I know that for so many, getting their questions answered is so important. So we are giving 2 full-hour sessions to making sure that we get those questions answered. Each ongoing class will be live and interactive, allowing you again to get your questions answered and still stay completely anonymous if you choose. All of the classes take place on Thursdays at 12 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Israel time. And our next class, our first class of the series, starts next week already, Thursday, April 23rd. Again, don't worry if you can't make it to a live class. All of the classes are recorded and will be available in your own personal membership area to listen to or download at your convenience. So I know a number of people can't always attend the live classes, but you can listen to it at your convenience. You can always send in questions to our customer service, and then we'll make sure that those are addressed in either one of the sessions or saved for the last Q&A sessions at the end. So again, please don't worry if you can't make it to the live sessions. Many people cannot, or some people come some weeks and some can't make it the others, but your questions can still be sent in via email and we will address those during those Q&A sessions. Plus, in addition to this full 8-week series, you'll also get a bonus course on achieving anxiety relief. Reinvent your inner monologue and face your daily insecurities, fears, and worries with strength and confidence through this 6-part series. Oftentimes, anxiety can go hand in hand with resentment, as Sarahana was talking about, self-esteem and finding your place in what those resentment feelings are bringing up for you. And oftentimes they can present anxious feelings. So we are including this series as well. Plus, disrupting the unbalanced marriage, understand one another, the role and impact you have on your relationship, and finally begin to release the pain caused by the imbalance. Again, a full series just really focusing on your marriage, your spouse, and what you can do about that. Again, walking hand in hand with the full series on resentment. And then, of course, Pathways to Positivity, which will help you empower yourself like never before as you discover your capabilities for removing your emotional burdens through this 8-part series. As you can see, Sarahana will be walking you through various aspects of parenting, marriage, and emotional well-being to ensure that you and your family, and most importantly, your spouse, are really set to thrive. You'll have one-on-one support throughout this program and will have the unique opportunity to get your questions answered that you haven't been able to get answered previously. But most importantly, by investing in yourself and your family, you'll finally understand what resentment is really telling you and why ignoring it is so harmful to your relationships. You'll discover how mutual effort builds connection and why showing up for each other is essential to feeling truly close in any relationship. You'll finally identify whether your resentment is valid, because sometimes the problem is real and sometimes it's rooted in assumptions you didn't know you were making. You'll walk away with concrete first steps, not just insight, but an actual plan for shifting the dynamic in your relationships. And you'll learn how to raise the conversation without it turning into a fight. You'll have practical language that opens dialogue instead of shutting it down. And you'll prevent resentment from building in the first place, because the best time to address it is before it quietly impacts everything. An opportunity like this rarely comes along, but we've always listened to our members' requests, and together with Sarahana, we are offering the guidance you need and deserve for a highly reduced rate. So you can get the full 8 weeks plus recordings of your weekly sessions in your own personal membership area, all three bonuses, and you can choose to become a basic member for just $297 or a platinum member for just $397. But again, you can see that those numbers are scratched out because I said in the very beginning, just for attending today, you'll get an additional discount for the first 10 people who sign up right now. You will get an additional $50 off. So the first 10 for basic, the first 10 for platinum, will get it for just $247 and platinum for just $347. If you can imagine even one session of therapy, one class that you go to learn something like this is almost more actually than a full 8 week series plus all of these incredible bonuses. And we're making it available to you right now. I'm going to go ahead. I'm actually going to ask Hannah, who's here on the line with us, if you can just put the link right into the chat box. I will also put it up on the screen. You can go straight to the chat box and copy and paste www.jewishworkshops.com/resentment. You can take it right from your chat box, put it into another browser, and make sure that you secure your spot right away. Let me see if Hannah, you can go ahead and put that in. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And grab that additional $50 off while it is still available to you. We'll keep the numbers posted, but of course, we would love to see as many people as possible being able to grab that additional discount and join. If you're having trouble signing up or need help, if you have questions, there are payment plan options available that will best fit your needs. But again, if you need help, I see someone right now. How can I register? Come on back and just let us know if you need any help with your name and your telephone number. Hannah's here, Tzipora's here. Thank you for being here on our Jewish Workshops team. They're happy to give you a quick call as soon as we're done, and they can help you register over the phone. And of course, you'll still get that discount if you go ahead and just add in that you need some help here. Once you're in, please come on back and let me know as well. I'd love to be able to welcome you. Just the words "I'm in" with your first name so that I can see how many people are grabbing these spots. And of course, like I said, you can go ahead and just put that into another browser because we are going to still get to some questions that have come in throughout today's class. And I know that you'll still want to hear those questions as you're getting your seat and confirming your registration. So as we have people signing up, I do want to go ahead and just welcome our newest members. Welcome Malki and welcome Nechama. Please, again, come on back and let me know once you're in with the words "I'm in" and your first name. And let me go ahead and get to some of these questions. Sorry. We actually had a couple questions come in ahead of time, which were really important. Welcome, Chaya. Wonderful to see you. Welcome, Gayla. Welcome, and so wonderful to have you as well. Let me see. Here we go. Thank you so much for this opportunity. What a well-needed class this is. I have a wonderful marriage, Baruch Hashem, but my husband spends way too much time on his phone, and it really makes me feel rejected and disconnected. We've spoken about it numerous times, but not much has changed. How can I handle the resentment I feel every time I see him on his phone?
Oh, got me my turn. Yeah. Yeah. It's a complicated question because I'm not sure what is the resentment in your case, right? We have to everybody could be resentful about that for different reasons. For example, somebody might have thought that they married a person who would never be on a phone, somebody who would use their time productively, let's say every moment, and they're very resentful that the contract or the understanding of the marriage has been breached by now finding themselves with a person who is a completely different person than the one they thought they married. That's one, possibility. Another possibility, of course, is that somebody resents their spouse for being on the phone because they themselves are working till they drop, into exhaustion at midnight, fall into bed or whatever it is, and they haven't stopped since 5 in the morning or something like that. While the husband is like, scrolling, he has to relax, he has to unwind, whatever. So the resentment would be a different kind of resentment for that. On the other hand, it could be that it's just a woman who he's not scrolling, he's taking a 10-minute break or he's taking, like he's scrolling a little bit, right? But she has an allergy to the idea for a number of reasons, perhaps modeling for the children or for how time should be used or how life should be lived or the content, the specific content of what he's watching and what's doing to his brain or the values of the house. Like, it really depends on what is hurting, right? The pain point. Remember I said we don't want to just say I feel resentful or I feel angry. We want to know why, what's hurting you about that. And then that might point to a wish that you're going to express for your husband. So depending on what it was, I don't want the children using their spare time for this. I tell them all the time they have to, do some artwork or writing or play piano or get outside and play with a ball, whatever. I don't want them doing that, but they see you doing it all the time. So if that's the issue, right, it can be like, sweetie, because of the children, whatever it is, I really need you to lock yourself up somewhere where they can't see what you're doing, okay? Because I don't want this for them. Do you want it for them? You're like, whatever, it can be a discussion that what do you need to address that pain point in you? What is the pain point? And like I said, sometimes it will actually be something you can ask for. But keep in mind that sometimes it's not appropriate for you to ask for it. And we're going to learn the difference between those times in the course. So, and what to do when you're not able to ask for behavioral change, right? So it's nothing here is easy smeezy, like one 50-minute session fixes this. This is tough stuff. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Welcome, KS. It says, we are in, and I love that you are doing this together as a couple. What a special way to really, bond and learn some incredible skills. So, that is really fantastic. Welcome. Um, we did have a question. How does the payment plan option work? When you go to the page to register, you can choose either the basic package or the platinum package. And once you click to register, you will see an option to break your payments over the course of several months. So again, you can pick whichever option best fits your needs. And you can also, again, write your name and telephone number if you need some help with that. We're happy to help. Um, Sorry, there was a quick question. I'm currently divorced and I wonder if I will feel comfortable with all of the marriage talk, even though I'm still hoping to get remarried, God willing. But will it apply to me right now?
I think that like the sections that we've divided the course into the topics, marriage, parenting, in-laws, work, community, friends, probably are not going to apply to every single person taking the course. What we're talking about there is examples. So if you got anything out of today's talk, even though perhaps you never had an ungrateful guest, okay, like it's going to be that the general principles that we're going to be looking at are going to be explored with the examples in those topic sections, but the principles of dealing with resentment will be in every class, will apply so that we can use them in other relationships. That's one thing. So like the lunch example brought out a lot of different issues, but this was not a course about how to deal with the frustrations about lunch. Okay, making a meal for somebody and they didn't bring a gift. That's not what it's essentially about. It was just an example, which I think you all understood. So the same thing that the examples will just be there for people, but you will want to listen to the principles, which will be very important in each one. Will it bother you to listen to somebody's, issues about children or about marriage if that isn't, those examples don't speak to you? I don't think it should bother you more than the lunch one. In other words, if lunch was never an issue for you, then, it's okay, but you got the important part, which is about feelings of resentment. So I don't think it should bother you, ideally, to hear about the issues of resentment, no matter what examples I'm using. Will it be boring? Not, no, because of that. Will it be triggering? That I can't help you with, right? Like, in other words, if you don't want to hear anything, somebody's taking the course and is not married with children and somehow listening to people's issues with, spouses and children will be triggering. There's not anything I can actually say about that. If you don't want to hear is that, people do have issues. Actually, people have issues with every relationship, and that's just the way it is. So we're going to be talking about it all, but through the lens of the feeling of resentment. We don't care in this course. This is not a marriage course. It's not a parenting course. It's not an in-law course. It's a resentment course. So take that as you will. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Um, there was another question. Um, I often, and this is super honest and vulnerable, so I appreciate um, you for writing this in, but I often really resent being a mother. I resent that I gained so much weight with my 3 pregnancies and I'm having the hardest time losing it. I resent that I lost so much freedom. I resent so much, and my kids really get on my nerves. They are in good hands. Of course, I love them, but the guilt of not always feeling grateful is eating away at me, and the resentment is just bubbling up inside, waiting to explode.
I hope you can join us for the course because,
Mhm.
first of all, the feelings you have are normal, completely normal. And having the upset, that is caused by life. Hashem, gives us certain situations that are upsetting. It's part of the spiritual challenge of life. Putting on weight, having trouble losing it is annoying. Dealing with children is like exhausting, frustrating, overwhelming, ungratifying a lot of the time. Okay, that's actually a well-researched fact. People like the idea of having children. People, appreciate parenthood on some kind of level, but the nitty-gritty on the daily basis, yes, parents are annoyed, bothered, irritated, drained, and lots of other unpleasant emotional realities in dealing with children. So what we're trying to do is find our happy path, okay? Even though many things are going to go wrong, many things, and like we can resent, like I said, life itself. We can resent Hashem. We can resent where we find ourselves, and even though these are what they call them, first world problems or whatever it is that, we could resent being in a country right now which is, struggling. It's under war, it's under attack. We could resent the attitude of, the world. We can resent our politicians. There's no end to where we might find and dwell in negative emotions, right? There's no end. There are everything. We have good reasons of every kind, from small frustrations to major wounding, but there's no end to it of how miserable we can be. The interesting thing is that we're so supposed to serve Hashem b'simcha. Okay, we're supposed to find that, part the waters there and walk through the path in the happiest way that we can. So when we're carrying resentment, that's essentially what we're doing. That's why I'm saying I hope you'll join us so we can get rid of the burden of those feelings.
Thank you so much. I do want to welcome our newest members, Chana, welcome Aviva, welcome Dina, and I'm sorry, let me grab this other one. And welcome, Sherry. Wonderful to have all of you. It looks like our spots are filling up really fast. So I think Hannah just let me know there are 3 spots still for basic, 3 spots still for platinum to get the additional discount. Of course, we are happy to have everyone, or as many, join in and still take part in the full course. But for that extra special discount, it is closing up shortly. Sarahana, I had a question come in. I've taken your course called Let Them, which I absolutely loved. How is this course different? Will this build on some of those topics, or is it completely different?
Well, it's not the same. It's not the same course, not at all. Let them is a particular fantastic strategy. But you may have discerned that in some of the things I'm talking about here, there's a little bit more focus on the inner world because that's where resentment is living. Let them as a strategy of accepting what people are doing, and it's not, it kind of is adjacent, I would say, to a resentment concept. But no, this course is not the same course. Although, if you've taken a few of my courses, you're certainly going to get the flavor of what I say and what I think and what I do. I'm not, there's a little bit of overlap in everything that I'm saying and doing, but it's not the same course to answer your question or the same emphasis or the same material or whatever. It's a different course. So, but I do think that Jewish Workshops offers a, should I say, Jillian, do you offer a money back guarantee if you don't like the course? I don't know what you do there. Like if it turns out to you it was the same course, I guess you could take it up with Jewish Workshops, but that is not how I'm designing the course. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. There is a money back guarantee if in the first week you do, you find that it's not something that you are resonating with.
Mhm.
You can reach out to us at jewishworkshops@jewishworkshops.com. Um, Thank you so much. There was just this other question I wanted to make sure to get to.
Yes, I have about
Oh,
2 minutes left,
I
Jillian.
want that one of those last platinum spots, but I need help. I'm not computer savvy. Please just put your name and your telephone number right into the chat box, and Hannah or Tzipora will give you a call shortly, and we'll make sure to get your spot saved. Um, My resentment has been going on for years against my spouse, and right now I'm kind of just feeling indifferent. My relationship is what you would call parv, more like a loyal relationship. Is there a chance to change and turn the clock back?
There always is. So, yes, it sounds like you've pulled back in a protective mode, but we can explore this and see how you can still be protected without needing to have stepped out of the circle of light, let's say. Like we want you to find a way. And there are some ways, okay, because we're looking at the inner, what's happened with the resentment. Like I said, it's you have to ruminate for it. You have to think about it. You have to dig it in. You have to bury it. Okay, so at the same time, it is something that we can lift out, and then there's much more air and space. And yes, we can start again if you want to. Okay, so if that's what you want, you'll be able to do it. That's what I would say.
Thank you. Let me grab one more question here. We are going to close up soon, but I want to get to as many questions as possible. So please make sure you put them in if you still have some questions. And of course, if you need help registering, please come and just let us know with your name and your telephone number. Let me just make sure I'm getting all these questions here.
Well, Jillian, I have to go in 5 minutes, so
Yes.
that's
Okay. Let me grab
okay.
this
Yeah.
one.
Okay.
My husband is the main provider, and while he takes care of our family financially, I often feel like we are still coming in second to his mother. He is constantly buying her things, takes care of her mortgage, and is at her emotional beck and call. I just want advice on how to emotionally tolerate this without holding so much resentment.
I would really examine the story that you're telling yourself. Okay, I'd like to write it out. I mean, like, you'll destroy it after, but I would put the whole story about what it means to you that this money and this time and effort are going to his mother. I think you really have to define the wound, the injury, and that will be the first step in approaching any solutions, emotional or practical, whatever. So that's what needs to happen here. What is the damage that's happening to you? What is getting hurt? What is the story you're telling about him? Okay. That's,
Thank you. And is it a form of self-abuse to allow these situations to continue to happen frequently to yourself?
well, if you are, yes, yes, if you're not taking care of yourself so that you're setting up situations for people to mistreat you. You're allowing it. So just for example, let's say there's a loving mother, grandmother who invites her married kids over with their kids, and every time they leave a hurricane there, and then this like, I don't know, 60-year-old woman, whatever it is, she's like on her hands and knees putting away all the toys. I don't know, whatever. And she does it again and again and again because her definition of being a good, loving grandmother is somebody who does this. But she resents her kids for leaving this mess there. And for not disciplining their children and not getting them to clean up. And she's resenting it every single time and not fixing it. Okay, so like there's a there is a certain masochistic tendency there, like a sort of like a neglect of self. And we're not going to blame the kids for doing what they're doing. It's like when yes, she's walking herself into it without setting boundaries. So I'll just say yes. We can go on, but I have to leave, so I can't. Okay.
Thank
So
you.
yeah.
As we're wrapping up, I'm going to go ahead and quickly turn it back to you, Sarahana. I know again that there are still, Baruch Hashem, so many people sitting here on the line, just kind of going back and forth in their minds. Is this the next step for me? Is this what's going to be able to kind of turn the clock and switch the way that I've been dealing with situations up until now? Is this going to work? Can I move forward? So I'm going to let you close up there and give them
Okay.
some words of wisdom.
So, when I will say that not all of us sort of see our own personal major issue as being one of resentment, even though I said at the beginning, we all feel resentment, okay, because we're dealing with people. And surely we've all been disappointed, frustrated, and our expectations have not been met, and we've been unappreciated, and so on. So we all have had experiences of resentment, but we may not think, oh, I'm a resentful person. I need this course to help me. Okay. Like, and you don't need to be, holding a ton of resentment or thinking of yourself as having resentment issues in order to benefit from this course, because it's really a course in the kind of thinking, feeling, and acting, like I said, that lifts the mud out of our system just generally and leaves us in a cleaner, happier, sparklier, brighter, optimistic place to live our lives. Like I said, we can resent Hashem, okay, for the situation he birthed us into, for the genes he gave us, for the life experience he sent our way, and all this stuff. There's places where we are ruminating, where we are seeing things in a dark way. That if we take the course and go like, okay, not every single moment in this course will be addressed to my issue, but over the 8 weeks, I'm going to gain and be happier and brighter. And that's how I see all of the growth that we do here in the family circle. It's not like every single thing is, speaking to me. It's the general picture of moving along to happier and happier and happier places. And it's good work to do before you get old and bitter and and unable to make a conclusion to your life, that ends in joy. So I would just say it doesn't matter whether you think you need the course or not. Join us. How's that? I would like to see you there.
Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you so much, Sarhana. I'm sorry to keep you for one more second, but
Yeah.
could this course help identify if it's abuse or resentment? Um,
Yeah.
I
Were
just
there
want
some
to.
things? Yeah. So resentment and abuse sometimes go together, and sometimes it's just resentment, right? And sometimes the resentment and abuse that goes together is because if you're in a relationship in some kind of context where somebody is taking advantage of you, you are doing more of the work, let's just say, or you are doing work and not being appreciated or remunerated for it or whatever it is. So you can be mistreated, and that's a real thing. Resentment's not just in your head or in your gut, right? Um, and maybe you have no way of really getting out of the situation. The situation's going to continue. So the person you resent is your child who lives with you or your boss, but you cannot switch jobs for whatever reason, or your neighbor you cannot move, or your spouse who you're not divorcing. And the person's going to still be there and still be themselves doing their unfair thing, right? So there can be situations like that where, of course, you are going to be unhappy. But we say, of course, you're going to be unhappy. We want to minimize that to the very bottom of what it could be. Could you be happy even in a situation that's unfair? And there are some ways, okay? If you're being truly wounded, okay, then you're going to be unhappy. It's like somebody punching you. Will it hurt? Yes, it will hurt. Do I have to go back and be punched again and again? Not always. We should identify what's happening here. So again, complicated question, different scenarios. Sometimes the resentment is completely something that we've created ourselves, okay? And we were going to see a big difference between those two kinds of experiences where the resentment is completely unnecessary and just hampering ourselves. And it's easy to remove it once we have the correct spiritually informed pathways and so on. And sometimes it's something else. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here with us. We always love having you. And thank you to everyone who joined us from near and far all over the world. It was such a blessing to have all of you. I've gotten so many thank yous here. Sarahana, thank you so much. Have an awesome
My
remainder
pleasure.
of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarahana, for all of the people who are still here on with us and you still have questions. Feel free to put them into the chat box. As I mentioned, Han and Sapora are still here and able to help get you in. We do have a couple spots left with this additional discount. And you know what? Anybody who is still here on the line with us and is interested in joining, I am going to extend that discount. So even if we hit that first 10 and you're number 11, I will be happy to grant the extra 50 off because I see the investment that you're ready to make. So please put your name and your telephone number right into this chat if you still need some help registering. I will keep the webinar open for the next few minutes. You won't hear or see anybody still, but we'll be here if you still need some help. So have a wonderful day and can't wait to see you next week for our very first session in the full course.